Welcome to the School on Wheels Lunch Hour Workshop, Engaging Students in Reading. My name is Natasha Bayes, and I'm the Education and Training Coordinator for School on Wheels. I'm really excited to have with me today Denise Burgher. Denise is a former high school English teacher in South LA and currently presents a series of workshops for parents to encourage reading with their children. Denise will be presenting strategies to help encourage reading and increase comprehension, and she will also answer any questions that you might have during the hour. For the purpose of sound quality, all participants are muted. You have the ability to ask questions at any time using the questions pane. Just type in your question and hit send. We'll be selecting the order for the questions and read them aloud. Please don't be shy in asking questions. We might save them till the end, though, if we can present the material first. So thanks again for attending, and at this time I'd like to introduce Denise. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your help with our tutors. You know, they're all volunteers, so they're definitely looking for some strategies that can help in their sessions.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me. Wanted to welcome everybody. Thank you for coming along the ride as well. Thank you for joining this conversation about reading strategies. I salute the commitment each of you has made to tutor students who receive support from the Schoolhouse on Wheels. The work that you all do is of immeasurable value. I hope this session will prove helpful and interesting to you both as tutors and with the children in your off-duty lives. As Natasha said, my name is Denise Burgher. I'm an avid reader. My favorite thing in the world to do is to read books. And wanting and hoping that we'll be able to share and develop this passion and love for reading with the students that you tutor. So this is a general reading strategies presentation that should prove useful among all age groups. So the format of the session will go as follows. There'll be a general introduction review of effective reading strategies for all ages, which will include a discussion of reading purposes, i.e. academic and personal reading, types of reading material, high interest texts, YA texts, i.e. young adult texts, comics, creating a healthy relationship with your student, setting the atmosphere or environment, discussing potential barriers, including linguistic, cultural, among others, introducing basic reading strategies, and then question and answer. If any questions are generated during the session, I will answer them in the time I have allotted at the end of the presentation for that purpose. However, if you do not already have, please get a pen or a pencil and some note paper to engage in a few exercises with me during the presentation. Ideally, this would have been interactive, but we're going to work with what we have. I love reading. Sitting with a good book is one of the greatest pleasures in life. For many of us, people who have achieved some success academically and perhaps even socially, you may or may not have connected your success in reading to your success in life. But literacy, fluency in reading is the greatest predictor for academic and future success. Reading, therefore, is critical. If you are a book lover, it might seem strange to have to think strategically or even critically about how to approach reading. For many of us, acquiring the skills of fluency happened fairly easily and painlessly. You might not even remember when your text turned into recognizable words or which book first trapped you between its pages. For others for whom this is or was not true, you might have an edge in understanding why and how readers struggle. What we all agree on and understand is that it is important to support the development of fluency in our students. Have you ever considered how to measure your success as a tutor? What are some of the areas, issues, or questions that you have when you're driving home after meeting with your student? Take a moment and jot down your thoughts. Yes, right now. Since we're talking about reading strategies, you're still writing, I'm going to suggest that the best possible measure of your success as a reading tutor is if your student develops a passion for reading. If by the end of your time with your student, they have a love, an interest in, a habit of reading, you would have succeeded in arming her for present and future success. Now that is ideal, of course, but any progress that is made towards loving reading and books is to be celebrated. What you are doing matters a lot. If you haven't finished writing them down, finish up your sentence. We're about to move on. For those of us who love reading, facilitating a love of reading in a student is reason enough. For the rest of us, let us remember that low literacy strongly correlates to unemployment, poverty, and crime. About 43% of those with the lowest literacy skills live in poverty, and 70% of the prison population falls into the two lowest levels of reading proficiency. The National Institute for Learning Literacy fact sheet is where I got that particular factoid. In our tutoring sessions, we already know that most of our students are reading on average 4 years behind their grade level. This distance becomes greater and harder to close as students move from elementary to middle and on to high school. When you focus on reading, the work you do matters a lot. I have included a brief agenda that we're going to go over right now. So in addition to what I had mentioned previously, please remember to write down any questions that you have. Okay, any questions that you have are important. So let's talk very quickly about the importance of fluency. Fluent readers make connections among the ideas in a text and between these ideas and their background knowledge. They're able to focus on comprehension. Decoding and fluency are not the same. The ability to decode is the ability to read what is written on a piece of paper, but fluency encompasses both the ability to decode and the ability to understand. The distinction between a fluent reader and a non-fluent reader is this. Less fluent readers focus on decoding and accessing the meaning of individual words. Therefore, they have little attention left for comprehension of the text. This distinction sounds simple, but it's actually quite great. So for those of you who have tutored high school students, you'll encounter students who can read, but if you ask them a question about what they've read, they will be incapable of answering whether basic comprehension or what we consider identification questions. That is the difference between someone who can decode and someone who is fluent. Okay, so what I want you to listen to very carefully right now is what is called a Reader's Bill of Rights. Cannot claim that I'm responsible for creating it, but I love it and I use it in my classroom. So this is a Reader's Bill of Rights and is written by a gentleman named Daniel Pennack. So as I read the list, please note any that resonate with you. You can either write it out or write down the number. Reader's Bill of Rights, number 1, the right to not read. Number 2, the right to skip pages. Number 3, the right to not finish. Number 4, the right to reread. Number 5, the right to read anything. Number 6, the right to escapism. Number 7, the right to read anywhere. Number 8, the right to browse. Number 9, the right to read out loud. And number 10, the right to not defend your tastes. Isn't that great? Who knew there was a Reader's Bill of Rights? Well, let's think about this for a minute. These are rights. They're not privileges. And as rights, rights pertain to everyone, regardless of age or stage. We have to remember as readers, developing and those charged with nurturing readers, that all readers have rights which need to be protected and recognized. Why? It's easy to forget that we read for pleasure. If reading is not pleasurable, then it will very quickly become punishment. If something feels like punishment, is it likely that we'll continue to do it? No, not if we're sane. If something we do brings us constant failure and criticism, if we feel inadequate or underprepared, or if the people, events, and issues are completely alien to us, how will we gain any purchase into the text? I'm going to reread the Bill of Rights again. Please, if you have not done so, jot down or put the number or a star beside whichever one appeals to you or resonates with you more than any other. The right to not read, the right to skip pages, the right to not finish, the right to reread, the right to read anything, the right to escapism, the right to read anywhere, the right to browse, the right to read out loud, and the right to not defend your tastes. Are you done? Great. Please do remember this right when you work with your students. Now let's think about it. Does the right instead look like a problem that needs to be navigated around or ignored? If your student wants to skip a page, how do you feel? If your student isn't interested in this particular text, do you resist that? If you shared this Reader's Bill of Rights with your students, which might they choose? Would sharing this text and/or concept empower them, give you more access to figuring out how to support them as they develop fluency? How do we bridge the space between the rights of the readers and the pressing needs of reading? This leads me to my first very, very important point. It is establishing rapport with your students. In order to learn, a student must trust you. In order to develop a bond of trust, you need to ask questions, listen, remember, and respond. In the process of getting to know your student so that you can effectively choose a book with them they are more likely to love, you are doing the single most important thing to ensure your and their success. You are strengthening and or developing a relationship. I'm going to say it again. You cannot learn from someone you do not trust. In teacher training school, we call that lowering the affective filter. In order to learn something new, your resistance, your emotional resistance has to be overcome. You cannot trust someone that you do not know. I'm not, of course, suggesting you violate healthy boundaries with your students in order to forge these bonds. No, I'm suggesting that effective tutoring is dependent on creating a stable and consistent relationship with your student. The student has to know that she can rely on you to show up, be prepared, be present, and interested. Showing up when expected, being pleasant, well-dressed, paying strict attention to your hygiene. Sounds silly, right? It's not. You are being scrutinized. Your students are looking at everything you say and do in order to understand you, what you represent, who you are, and how they relate to you. But most importantly, even more important than all of that, show an interest in your student. What do they like to eat? What do they think about topical events? What are their favorite toys, video games, foods? Do they like to draw, sing, rap, play football, skate, play soccer, cook, knit? As you develop a relationship with your students, these answers form important bonds of connection between the both of you and function to lower that affective barrier, allowing your student to learn from you and you to learn from her. Establish the boundaries and mutual expectations you have of each other and why working together is a good thing. Revisit or change as necessary. If your student does not trust you or does not think you are interested in them and or care about them, teaching them will be practically impossible. They will resist your efforts. Your first task is to develop a healthy relationship based on trust. If what Edgar Allan Poe said is still valid, I intend to put up with nothing that I can put down, then should we expect anything different from a child? No, because reading should be exciting. High interest and high interest texts, appropriate texts, mean interested children. We read because we enjoy reading. Learning about whatever it is we are reading is interesting to us. That's why we do it. So one of the most important things you can do with your students is to get to know them so that you can discover appropriate reading material, which will speak to the areas, people, times, issues, and themes they find interesting. I do not suggest editing or pontificating about the topics unless they're extremely sexual or egregiously violent. You're the adult. You get to choose. If that is the case, it is time for a discussion, not condemnation. Mark Twain said, "A classic is a book which people praise but don't read." Let's be clear. We don't want to do that. Let us neither demand nor insist that our students read quote-unquote classics, which apparently did not have that much appeal to Mr. Twain, because our students who have not yet been bitten by the reading bug are not going to be interested. If they find a text alien or unappealing, they will not read it. Meet your students where they are. Are they interested in ranchero music? Download some lyrics, read them together. Narco corridos? Print and read the lyrics. Make comparisons between the structure of the lyrics and more traditional ballads. Your trusty search engine is your friend. Look up newspaper articles that discuss the songs and the singers in the era about the areas where they are from. It's the same thing for rap and R&B. If you download the lyrics to some rap songs, you would probably be amazed at the poetic structure, the metaphors and literary devices implemented by the singers, which are worthy of discussion, exploration, consideration, or just criticism. Skating, football, baseball, cooking, they're all valid topics. Pull newspaper articles, sports magazines, blogs, read them together. Comics, graphic novels, the cheat strategies for video games, grocery lists, ingredients and recipes, magazines, newspapers, whatever your student is interested in is what you want to read, discuss, and explore. The next topic is equally important. It's literally setting the atmosphere for where you will explore reading together. Ideally, you'll be able to create an atmosphere for reading. You may tutor in a center, in a coffee shop, the local library, or perhaps even in a school. Wherever you are, do something to set the atmosphere. Choose the quietest section of the library and always go there. Let that chair by that window and the coffee be your spot. Coffee shop, sorry, be your spot. If you're in a center or a school, try to find a relatively serene spot and claim it. This is where the magic happens. When you discuss reading with your student at home, they may have to read in bed after everyone has gone to sleep or in the restroom. Wherever the location is, claim it. Reading is a reflective activity which requires time, energy, and a degree of privacy. A solitary pursuit which allows us to communicate with the authors, but until we develop that ability to read through a tornado in our special reading bubble, we need the support and the validation to carve out that space. Make sure that you make an effort to do that. There are other barriers that may have to be addressed in order to tutor students in reading effectively: culture, language, gender, sexual orientation, religion, class, among others. Be honest with yourself. Do you have an issue with a student because of their race? Do you have preconceived ideas about a student because of their religion? Do you think a student may be struggling with their gender identity or sexual orientation, their class, their immigration status? I would encourage you to think with me through the following points. Wherever your students may or may not come from, whatever experiences, influences, challenges, or benefits, whatever marks them as different from you, what you both share is humanity. As human beings, you each possess a remarkable organ called the brain, which is the seat of the mind. It has been proven that we utilize less than 4% of our brains. More interestingly, that the brain is extremely plastic and therefore able to learn, adapt, and develop far more and in ways that science cannot understand or exploit. I would suggest to you that you and your students therefore have far more in common with each other than you might otherwise perceive. Moreover, since both of you are working on a mutual goal, developing a love for reading, you have entered into a mutual partnership with a sentient being whose potential for love, life, and learning are limitless. As her tutor, you've been given a sacred charge to nurture and protect a love for learning and reading that is critical to her present and future success. Do not allow the differences between you, as the adult who sets the tone and holds the line, to impact your commitment, openness, and passion for teaching. If you make a mistake, own it and apologize. Discuss it where appropriate and move on. This is the process of life, and you are modeling how adults deal with conflicts, issues, and challenges. You're always the grown-up. Okay, now on to the good stuff. Fluent reading can be separated into different areas of competency. Struggling in any area will be frustrating and can manifest as resistance, avoidance, or worse. Developing mastery in areas will reduce anxiety and increase satisfaction and pique curiosity. When a student says, "I do not understand," analysis, observation, and patience will help you both identify specific areas and work on them. By using specific terms to identify a problem and using the strategies we will discuss, you will be empowering your student, and you as her teacher will facilitate her progress. Please take note of the following skills: comprehension, deduction/inference, organization, language/tone, purpose/intent, and context/relevance. You can add grammar to organization. I'll explain in a minute. You might notice I did not include vocabulary. Vocabulary is developed over time as your student reads. Understanding words that are encountered in a text is possible using context clues versus committing dictionary words and definitions to memory. Hence, I don't really focus on vocabulary when it comes to teaching reading. Okay, so officially, the 5 areas of reading competency are phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. You can take a note of those, but I'm going to go over them very quickly. Phonemic awareness literally means the ability to identify and manipulate sounds to make words, understanding the patterns that we use to create new words from words we already know, i.e. T has a hard T and a soft T, etc. Phonics is a relationship between written letters and the sounds they make, including knowing the alphabet and diphthongs. So that's literally being able to connect the letters that you see on a page to the sounds that they make. You can have phonemic awareness and not be able to read. You can understand phonics, but then you definitely have to have phonemic awareness to do that. Fluency, the ability to read text accurately with appropriate pacing and understanding. Vocabulary, words we use to communicate. The more words we know and understand, the better our vocabulary. And comprehension, the ability to understand the message, intent, and substance of a text, and make relevant conclusions and extensions from the text to one's own experiences. All right, so we have these areas of competence. Now we're going to actually go into some strategies. This is the #1 strategy, and if you don't remember anything else from this entire presentation, please try to commit this to memory. Pause, prompt, and praise. When you are reading, you always want to pause, prompt, and praise. Okay, when you pause while your students are reading. You take some time to help them figure out new words or help them practice unfamiliar words. You can take turns reading sentences. You can adjust your pacing to the student's processing. Take a break from reading altogether and allow the student instead to listen to you as you read out loud. This is a marathon and not a sprint. Sometimes as adults and teachers or tutors, we can get frustrated with students, but this is their process. We're just there to facilitate it. Be willing to take breaks. Prompt. You help the student sound out words that they're struggling with. Allow them to try, but step in just before they get frustrated. The tension is important. The more you practice it, the better you'll get at figuring out exactly where to make that intervention. Again, you don't wait until they get frustrated, but you allow them to struggle just a little bit. Repetition is key to mastering fluency. Prompting builds on what the student already knows. Prompting is not criticism. It is positive and affirming. Ask questions about the text to deepen comprehension and facilitate connections between the student and the text. This is the most important one. Praise. Reading is fun. When your student is successful, tell them. Reward them for their effort. Building confidence is critical, especially for struggling readers. Remember, it takes 7 compliments to negate a 1 criticism. Compliment your student, but avoid exaggeration. Students will learn not to trust you if they believe you're not being truthful. Here are some general things to remember. Try to keep your reading sessions, particularly with struggling readers, short. Gradually build time in increments. On average, kids can stay focused at the elementary level 3 to 5 minutes. Yes, they've done studies on this. Middle school, 5 to 7 minutes. High school, 10 to 15. For those of you who are interested in random information, this actually mirrors the amount of time that we watch TV programs for, and then this is the commercial breaks. Apparently, we're training our brains. The good thing about this is the ability to focus and concentrate will increase over time. But don't go into the process thinking, oh, we're going to be doing this for 30 minutes straight. No, you won't. If it works, great. But if not, meet your student where they are. You'll start 3 to 5 minutes. Next week, hopefully, you'll maybe do 4 to 6 minutes, and you increase over time. Okay? Keep sessions relaxed. Find a comfortable place where you can settle down. Remember, what we're developing is a passion for reading. We're developing a joy for reading. This should be fun. Give lots of praise. Progress may not always be fast because children do not always find the skill of reading and understanding easy to grasp. Talk, talk, talk. Talk about the book before you begin to read. Look at the front cover and any pictures, if any. Make some predictions. What do you think the book is going to be about? Why do you think it's going to be about that? Turn it over, look at the back. Are there any clues? Flip through it. Do the chapters have headings? Get to know the text before you get started. Ask your student to think about or even guess what's going to happen. Will there be a good guy? Will there be a bad guy? Ask questions to check your students' understanding about what might happen next as you're reading. So you're not just reading the entire text from cover to cover. No, you stop. Before something happens, maybe before the climax, what do you think is going to happen? What is she going to say? What is she going to do? This is exciting. This is fun. Why did something happen? Why did he say that? Why did he do that? Even after you finish reading the book, talk about the book afterwards. Did the student enjoy it? Why? What was the best part? Why not? Stay engaged. If your student struggles over a particular word, try to find ways to help them remember what that word sounds like and what that word means. Look at the shape of the word. For example, the word the. T is always first, the H is always second, the E is always last. And there's a pattern. Help them look at that. Make a connection between the way those words look, the way they're pronounced, and what they mean. Or you can guess the word from the sentence or even look at the pictures. All of these are clues to help to deepen and to strengthen their ability to comprehend. Use the word in a sentence with them to demonstrate other ways to use the word. So for example, if you're learning the word under, my feet are under the table, the bird was under the tree. However you play with it, you find ways to give them access to the word in different contexts. You can have them make a list as you go through the list of hard words and have them write them down, because this will help them to remember and it will jog another way of learning, which will again deepen their ability to understand what they're reading. Now, this is also very important. Be a good model for your student. Let them see you reading. When you put down your stuff, hey, this is the book that I'm reading. You can tell them a little about the book, or this is the blog that I was reading before I came in, and this is what's happening. When children see adults reading and adults who matter to them in their life, it makes reading seem as if it's a normal, natural part of what and who you are, and it gives them more of an access to it. Let them know that reading is a valuable skill and one that you enjoy. You can tell them about a book or a story that you liked when you were a child. You might still even be able to find a copy of it online. Keep it interesting. Make up a story. You can take turns. You can start the story and have your student pick up with the following sentence, and you can go back and forth. You can tell them a story about when you were a child or something that happened to you at school. Remember, you don't always need a book to tell a good story, because at the end of the day, that's actually what a book is. It's a good story. So you can get them interested in just listening to and making up stories. Take turns to read parts of the story. You can go, I read a sentence, you read a sentence, or I read a paragraph, then you read a paragraph, or you can go in sections, or even by the action in the story. You can tell them one thing that you really enjoy about listening to them read. Kids love compliments. It builds their self-esteem and their confidence, and it helps develop your relationship. You guys can act out the best part of the story or the worst part of the story. You can change the ending of the story and imagine how it could be better or how it could be worse. Now we're going to move actually into our focus areas. We're going to go into some basic reading strategies, which is what this is all about. Please utilize these questions that I'm going to go over during your sessions with your students to start, continue, or deepen conversations as you read. Feel free to take notes on each topic. Can you identify areas that your students struggle with? Well, thinking through these questions and helping them identify the answers, help them develop mastery in this area, that's the plan. So let's first talk about comprehension. Can your student describe, understand, select, or retrieve information, events, or ideas from text using quotations? By that I mean, if you ask them, what did Bob say just before he found out that he won the contest? Will they be able to go in the text, identify the subject of the sentence, Bob, identify the quotation marks that indicate that Bob is talking, and tell you what Bob just said? If your student can answer that question, then your student is already demonstrating a level of comprehension. Can your student tell you where the characters in the story live? Who are the main characters? Can they tell you the plot, what happened in the story? Can they describe the problem or the conflict in the story? Can they describe how it was solved, or perhaps how they would have solved it? Can their student identify words that describe the setting or the character using that language? Can they explain what happened after this particular event? Can they tell you why? Can they look at the picture of the character, and can they describe how the character is feeling? Why? Can they describe what happened at this point in the story when such and such happened? Can they tell you what will happen next? Can they tell you what the character said to this other character, that other character? If they can answer those questions, then they're actually comprehending or understanding what is happening in the text. Deduction, inference. This is another question that you have to ask yourself. Can my student deduce, infer, and understand information from the text? Now, these are more abstract qualities that are connected to comprehension, but they are the ability of a student to fill in missing information or to imagine what will happen next based on the information they already have. So this is more abstract. So that's why these questions will go as follows. What do you think will happen because? So because so-and-so said so-and-so, or because so-and-so did so-and-so, what do you think is going to happen next? Well, if you're not sure, whose eyes are we looking through? Is this an omnipotent? They won't know this language, you will, but you can phrase it appropriately. Who is telling this story? Who is experiencing these things? How do we know? Why do you think this character feels in this particular way? Or why not? If this was you, what would you do next? How have the characters changed? Have they changed at all? Predict what you think is going to happen next. What makes you think so? How do you know that whatever this character's name is going to say so-and-so or feel so-and-so? What does the main character feel or think at this point in the story? This requires your student to imagine, to inhabit the character, to inhabit the story, and imagine what's going to happen next. A completely different skill set, but very important. Organization. Has your student thought about the structure and organization of the text, literally what it looks like? How does the title of the story encourage them to read more, or does it not? Would it be a better story if they had a different title? How does the story blurb, the description on the back cover, encourage you to read the book, or does it not encourage you? What things do you want to find out after reading this title or reading the blurb? Some of the text is printed in a different way, in italics. Some of it's bold. Why? Why do you think the writer does that? Why is it organized this way? Has the author repeated different structures, words, or phrases? Why? To accomplish what? What's the point? Does it have pictures? What do the pictures do? Is there a caption? Is something in capital letters? Why? Why did the author choose to change the paragraph here? What's going on? What's that about? If your student is able to answer these questions, they are demonstrating their ability to understand the organization of the text. Let's look at language and tone. Can your student explain and comment on the writer's use of language, including grammar features? So, for example, which words has the author used to make the writing sound more formal or informal? Is there a difference? What is formal writing anyway? Why has the author used italics, bold, exclamation marks, headings, bullet points, captions? How does that deepen their understanding of the tone? And by tone, I literally mean, is it an angry tone? How does the text make you feel? It's the best way, I think, to capture the idea of tone. Does the tone of the language make you excited? Does it make you sad? Does it make you reflective? Well, how did the author do that? What does the author use in the text to make the characters sound funny or sad or angry? Did it work? Think of another word you could use. What different effect would your word have had that word been used instead of the one the author used? As a reader, how do you feel about this character? What makes you feel that way? Can you find any similes or metaphors in the story? You definitely will be able to. Find some adjectives that help you picture the scene or the character in your mind. Close your eyes. What do you see? Why? Find a sentence that encourages you to want to read more of the story. Moving on to purpose and intent. Can they express the writer's purpose and viewpoint of writing the story? Why did they write this story? Did they want us to learn something? Did they want us to think about something? Were they effective? That's purpose and intent. Did they accomplish their purpose? Maybe they didn't. Why? Why not? What makes this a good story? Or what makes this a bad story? What effect do you think the story has on the reader? Because now we're talking about, again, did they accomplish their goal? Could the story be better? What would you suggest? What impression does the author want to give of this character? Why? What is the purpose of this paragraph? In other words, is this a transitionary paragraph? Is he trying to get us to move on? Or is this author trying to give us a particular description to make us feel a particular thing or know a particular thing? Why was this done? Who is this trying to persuade? Who is the author talking to? Is the author talking to an adult? Is the author talking to a child? Does it make a difference? Do you think that it was okay when this character said or did? Or was it right when this character said or did or didn't do? Does this story try to get us to be or to think or to do something? What was the reason? Why did the author write this? The next category is context and relevance. Can your student relate this story to its social, historical, or cultural tradition? Where is the story set? Is it in Ireland? Is it in South America? Is it in South LA? Does it matter? How is the hero, or the heroine of the story similar to others you've read about, or perhaps even watched on TV? Are they the same? Are they different? How? What does the story remind your student of? Has something like this happened to you or someone that you know? How would you have felt in that situation if you were the heroine or if you were the hero? What would you have done differently? What other stories have similar openings or beginnings or endings to this one? Does the story have a message? What is the theme? What are we supposed to learn as a result of reading this story? Are there any familiar patterns that you notice? Is there a structure to it? What is the structure? Did the author use imagery? If so, were they effective? What are they? Does the story make you want to find out more about the history or the culture or the social issue that's being discussed? If so, how and what? We are about at the end. I hope this has been interesting and useful. I don't know if Natasha has any questions for me. If she does, we're going to get into those right now. And that's it.
Great. That was a lot of good information. We do have one question about it. Please type in your questions in the questions pane. Maybe if you have a specific situation with your student that you're trying to work through with reading, we would appreciate it. We had one question, and I know you covered some of this information while you were talking,
Sure.
but we'll just revisit it with the questions. My student reads pretty well. However, when we get to answering questions on the text, she either only reads the first few words of the question and jumps straight to the answer, or misreads the question and answers wrongly. Can you please give me some of your ideas on how to motivate her to slow down and get the full question before trying to answer, and often getting the answer wrong?
Absolutely. That's actually a common problem, particularly because we have moved to an emphasis on multiple choice. And so what students are inclined to do, because they're actually trained to do this in the classroom very often, is look for keywords or phrases that will take them to the specific answer in the text, and then they pair them. So there are a couple of strategies. The first one is to let her know that she needs to slow down. And the whole point in slowing down is to ensure accuracy. So when she reads a question, you want to train her how to break down the question. So one of the first things that she does to break down or to analyze the question is to take her pencil or her pen, and this is a common strategy, circle the verbs. So if the question says, why do you think Sarah wants to play with Andy? Go through and identify, circle all the verbs, and then underline the directions, the whys, the hows, the wheres, because what that will do then is that will slow her down, and that will force her to engage with the question. And when she engages with the question, she'll be more likely then not only to understand it, but find the answer. So the first thing, always to slow down and to break down. So again, circle the verbs, look for the verbs, because the verb is going to tell her what she needs to do or what she needs to look for, or what the question in specific is requiring her to do. Then underline the directions. So where, how, any transition words. From that point, then she goes into the text because she's already slowed down. She had to analyze the question, so she had to go ahead and write, circle, underline. Then she goes into the text. When she goes into the text, just having had to slow down, it will improve the likelihood that she will find the answer. Try to remind her that pairing, almost like those concentration games that we used to do as a kid, is not the question. The question is asking and looking for comprehension. And comprehension requires that you again slow down, engage with the question, and then think through to find the answers in the text. When she thinks that she's found the answer in the text, tell her to put a star next to it. And then read that section and compare them to see if she has not matched them, but instead has connected them. And so with this, what you're trying to do is you're trying to make transparent the process of thinking through a problem versus matching. And you can use that language with her when you talk with her about it. So again, analyze the question, break down and analyze the question. Practice this with her. It's actually fun. If you're doing it in a tutoring session, you can even have different coloring pencils. That's one of the things that I used to do. So verbs then got circled in green. Directions got circled, I think, in yellow, and I think the subject we used to underline in red. But whatever it is, force her to engage with, compel her, invite her to engage with the question, and then make a comparison between what the question is asking her to do and the information in the text. Star it and then go back. So you're actually walking her through how to think about the question, then think about the answer in order to produce the result. And also remind her, again, it's not a race. Better for her to get 3 correct than to not answer 4 or 5 because she got them wrong.
Great, thank you. There was another question from Sarah. How can one work on a student's ability to decode meaning?
Absolutely, that is an awesome question. So first and foremost, again, make sure that the student is comfortable and that reading is not, and it sounds as if I'm being repetitive, but particularly because reading for so many students is frustrating, we really, really, really have to be so very careful. And I'm sure this is something that you're already doing, so hopefully I'm just validating that, to be very careful to make reading something pleasurable and enjoyable. So first off, be very, very aware of that. Now, from there, try to do more interactive and hands-on activities. By that I mean, so let's say you're reading a storybook and there's a character. After you've read the storybook, or you've read even a piece of the storybook, you have a little bit about the main character, have him draw a picture. So what is he going to draw a picture of? Say, okay, let's say you're reading a storybook about a little boy who got a brand new bicycle. So okay, fine, we've read that, Travis got a new bicycle. So we're going to stop reading right now. We're going to stop reading? Yes, we are. And here is the piece of paper, and here are some coloring pens or markers, whatever. I want you to draw a picture of what is happening with Travis. You want me to draw a picture? Yes. If your student does not like drawing, not a problem. Then you get to act it out. Show me what Travis looked like when he got his bicycle. What will happen is, all of a sudden, the text has gone away. So there isn't any pressure or anxiety about, oh my God, I'm going to have to continue reading this and or struggling with it. His brain is now turned on because it's now interactive. And you are now asking him to imagine and engage with the text in a completely different way. If you have finger puppets or hand puppets, you guys can act out the dialogue, in the story. So you can say, okay, fine, we're just going to put this in front of us so they can see what the characters say. Now you're going to be so-and-so and I'm going to be so-and-so. Again, what this does is it turns on his or her imagination. It invites them to imagine and think with the text instead of just mechanically, almost like a machine, decoding. No. It's not about decoding. I want you to think with me. You don't even have to say that. Let's draw. They like to draw. Let's act this out. Or I'll be so-and-so, you be so-and-so. I'm going to say such and such. Remember, okay, let's act out this part of the story. Why? Because this was the most interesting part, right? Remember? Okay, cool. So I'm going to be so-and-so, you be so-and-so. You're going to have to be a bit dramatic, but you guys already know that teaching involves some degree of performance. It works. Believe me, it works. But what you're doing, again, is you're engaging these different areas of their mind. This is active learning, and you are opening their imagination to the narrative, and you're empowering them. And when you take the text away, it helps to reduce some of the, or you just have it as a prop, just as a prop. And then afterwards, you can go back. Okay, good. Now let's see what happens next. Oh yeah, that's right. We don't know what happens next. Okay, good. Let's do some more reading. And then you can stop them and go into some of the comprehension questions. And if the questions again are stressful, not a problem. Now it's time to act it out. Or now it's time to close your eyes and imagine. So you want to activate other parts of his or her brain while you're engaging with the text. And again, the goal is a love of reading. So the more fun, the more creative, the more productive, and then you go back to the text.
Thanks.
Absolutely.
There was another question. It's really crowded at the shelter, so it's hard to find a quiet place to read. I don't know if that's something I have to change or some strategy I can use to keep their attention. Do you have any suggestions for help?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I definitely sympathize. And so if you have the ability to be in a different space with them that's not going to be logistically impossible, I would definitely say that. You're an adult, you know what's safe, you know what is accessible, you know what will work. If you don't have that, then own it. Own it. And this is what I meant by one of the barriers. So, and I also talked about creating the space. And so here's what I mean. Okay, Natasha, we're going to read today. It's kind of noisy in here, don't you think? Yeah, it kind of sucks because if it wasn't so noisy, we could focus a little bit better. What are some of the things that we can do? So in other words, you talk about it, own it. You just own it. This is the scenario. This is what's going on. Where do you think we could go and sit down to read? How do you think we can make this better? The child will have feedback. And when you have a conversation with the child will feel empowered. They'll feel respected. Oh, you care about this. This matters to you. And this is a problem that we're going to solve together. Yeah, absolutely it is. So let's talk about it and let's see what we can figure out. Now, together you guys might decide, well, there isn't anything we can do. We have to stay where we are. Or together you might be able to come up with a solution. If you have to stay, then this becomes part of the game. All right. So you know what we're going to do right now, Natasha? We're going to deploy our reading bubble. Are you ready? Yes. What are we going to do in our reading bubble? In our reading bubble, we're going to tune out what's happening outside of us, and we're going to focus really, 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 really hard on what's in front of us. And how are we going to do that? You are creating the environment that your student is going to inhabit. You are the person who is modeling exactly the self-same skill that they're going to use later on in an office, right? We've all been there, or they're going to use later on in their classroom. But they're a child, so they need support, and they need someone to externalize and or make transparent this process that we can automatically click into when we go into a space now because we're adults. So again, talk about it with them. Own it. It is noisy as all get out. Goodness gracious. Gosh, what would be ideal? This would be ideal. I know, right? What do you think? Yeah, that's true. Well, can we? Well, if you can't, if you can, awesome. If you can't, okay. Well, what can we do? And now I'm going to model to you in your mind, you're saying this, how we manage these kinds of scenarios and settings. And the truth of the matter is, as most of us are able to do, not all, if you really get into something, there could be a tornado going on outside and you're not going to notice. I'm not saying that you need to use this as a measure of your success. I am saying that it is a skill that you're building in your student. But good luck. That's hard. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. Thanks. There's another question about reading logs. When students come, they have required reading logs to complete for the next day.
Sure.
How do I, as a tutor, exercise more patience and not just strive to complete that?
Yeah, that, again, as a teacher who used to assign reading logs, I understand the teacher's goal, but I also understand that that's something that's difficult to kind of manage, particularly if you are in a time crunch. So hopefully, if you're able to engage the student by using questions that you already had or some of the questions that I provided today, that will provide the basis for what they write in their log, and you can talk them through it. When I used to assign reading logs, I didn't focus on grammar. Find out if the teacher focuses on grammar for the reading logs, because you don't want to deep six their grade because you misguided them or I misguided you into misguiding them at all. So find out definitely what the status is as regards grammar. But after you know that, then what you will be able to do, ideally they won't care about grammar because really you just try to make sure the kid read and you flip through and you give it a check mark and it's out of a particular number of percentage points. But if the teacher does not focus on grammar, you'll be able to use some of these questions and they will be able to write that down. Generally, you have page numbers and you give a brief summary. It's no more than 2, depending on the age of the student. It could go up to 5 sentences. So they can do a quick summary after you have finished your tutoring session with them. Or if the teacher is more open about the process, they can give their impressions of the book in the reading log. But again, you can use the questions as a guide, but I would definitely do that at the end. So ideally, you've had a fantastic reading session with your student, and then them writing about it is actually kind of fun and cool. We didn't go into reading and writing, of course, they go together like peanut butter and jelly, or even more so. However, for the purposes of this presentation, we only focused on reading, but that's what I would suggest. I would have them do the reading log, and they can do the reading log with you afterwards together. You guys can do it together, or they can do it on their own. But again, find out Is grammar important? Do you want a summary, i.e. you being the teacher? Do you want just general impressions? Find out what the requirements are, and then I would definitely have them do that at the end. So I would allot no more than 5 to 6 minutes at the end for them to do their reading log, because again, it's usually just a percentage point thing to make sure that the student read. But good luck with that. Get some information before you allow me to misguide you to misguide them. Okay.
Great. And there's another one about how do you encourage students to move beyond what they're comfortable with as far as reading levels? Sometimes they end up reading Dr. Seuss for a long, long time.
Absolutely. That is actually a multifaceted issue. So when you find the area that your student is interested in, just as it is with us, I'm sure many of us have fallen down the internet rabbit hole where you keep clicking on links and then it's 5 hours later and your dog is angry and you haven't done what you need to do. Generally speaking, if you find an area or a topic that your student is interested in, it creates its own momentum and the student continues wanting to learn more and find out more about it. If alternatively you create a passion for reading in your student, they enjoy just the process of reading, which is still the goal. I want to say that again. The point is to get your student to a place where they just love to read. It's their favorite thing to do is to pick up a book and to get lost in this author's world that they've created. And so ideally, if we're able to accomplish that goal where reading is not just for school, which is why even at the beginning of the presentation, and I probably didn't emphasize it enough, the goal is to create readers who love reading. And so if we look at reading like that versus just saying that reading is for school or reading is in order for you to get a grade, no. Reading is something that you enjoy just because it is enjoyable. Reading is something that means a lot to you because it gives you access to people and places and information that beforehand you did not have any true knowledge of. If you're able to do that, then the momentum continues all by itself. And your student won't need you or won't need the prompting to continue to go back and forth because they're going to want to keep going of their own accord. Having said that, then I would try to move back into developing that. That is the goal. So what is the student interested in? Again, it doesn't matter. Skating, football, girls, it's immaterial. Okay, good. Let's do some research. What can we find out about that? Once they start reading and enjoying in a particular topic, it will then spread into other areas and it will take them naturally forwards. They might never love reading about history. Okay. They might never love reading even Mark Twain, who was fun to people who, were born 60, 70 years ago because Mark Twain was not a formal writer. We experience his writing as formal now, but back then he wasn't. Neither was Shakespeare. See, we forget these things, right? Shakespeare wrote in the vernacular back then. Now it feels foreign to us because, well, we don't speak Elizabethan English or Shakespearean English. No, because it's a completely different time frame and context. So meet your student wherever your student is and work with them where they are, just to develop that passion, to have that fun, that interest. That's your goal. Everything else, I promise you, will fall in place.
Thank you. It doesn't look like we have any more questions. We just had a comment though from one of the tutors, Keegan. He said, this helped me begin to imagine a better structure for our reading time. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
And I'm sure that reflects
I'm glad.
many of the tutors. I really appreciate the tutors attending, to wanting to learn more about how to help their students, and I very, very much appreciate Denise being here and bringing her expertise and to help you guys be more effective in your sessions. We will have a recording of this available later if you want to watch it again, and we do have another upcoming workshop next Tuesday, March 25th. And we're going to be talking about technology in our program and how we're implementing that to help our students better, to help you have more tools as a tutor. So if you can join us for that, that would be great. That's also at noon time. So if you have any questions that come up later, you can always email me. And thanks again, Denise.
Thank you for having me. Hopefully it was helpful.
It was. It was a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Have a great day, everyone.